So I welcome you all for today's session. You all know that this is 8th day of our training program, and by the time we have tried to cover some of the passive components, and in this week we are discussing about active component, which is a microwave amplifier. The first session of 8th day will be talking about very important microwave amplifier, which is a high power amplifier. So what we have discussed during yesterday and day before yesterday is about basic theory related to microwave amplifiers, some of the important aspects related to design of microwave amplifiers. And yesterday we tried to design a maximum gain amplifier, which is also called as a case of conjugate match. And then we have discussed about design of specified gain amplifier. During the last session of yesterday's training, we have also designed a low noise amplifier. So all these three types we have discussed in detail, and we have also covered some of the hands-on sessions so that later on you can always practice for the design of these types of amplifiers. So the last exercise which we have planned to cover through this training program is high power amplifier. So first, I will just try to introduce you to the topic of high power amplifiers. And since the design of high power amplifier involves a lot of trades, right from the availability of proper nonlinear model of transistor, because the high power amplifier generally they do operate in nonlinear region. So having S parameter data of that transistor will not be sufficient to design a proper high power amplifier. For that reason, every manufacturer, as they do provide S parameter data of their transistor, they do provide nonlinear model for that particular transistor. So that can be used to design any high power amplifier. So right from selection of transistor, availability of its nonlinear model, and then going ahead and doing proper stability analysis, DCIV analysis as we do for any general purpose microwave amplifier, then we have to go to very important step called as a load pull analysis. And once you have a load pull analysis, then you have to determine the input and load impedances and go ahead and do the impedance matching network design for input and output side. And at the end, you have to make your complete amplifier, see its response over the frequency sweep as well as over the power sweep, because you should know that what is the compression region and what input power this device is going to produce, what kind of output power. So that will let you know what is the power added efficiency of that power amplifier. Again, this will not complete the design process of power amplifier. You have to check the performance of power amplifier with real world modulated signals, and even you have to carry out the intermodulation analysis for your power amplifier. So it's a very long process. There are a lot of steps involved in power amplifier design, and it is very difficult to cover all these steps with you all participants in hands-on sessions. So what I have planned, and I hope most of you will agree with me, I will just demonstrate you each and every aspect of the power amplifier design. You can always refer to the recordings which we will made available on my YouTube channel later on. If you are interested to design high power amplifier, step by step process you can follow, and you can have hands-on experience to design a high power amplifier. So to save the time, I have planned at least demonstrating all these things will require 40 to 50 minutes. So you will appreciate that it involves a lot of steps, it involves a lot of understanding, and it involves a lot of design aspects to be covered for any high power amplifier design. And once we will finish out our first session for today, later on we are going to very important topic which is interest of many of our participants, that is microstrip patch antenna. So keeping that things in mind, now I will demonstrate the important steps and few important examples which I have completed for the power amplifiers. Hope you can see the slide which I have shared. It says that this is our design 4. Design 1 was conjugate match amplifier. Design 2 was specified gain amplifier. Design 3 was low noise amplifier. And now this is design 4, which is high power amplifier. So whatever we have written on the schedule or maybe a program leaflet, we are trying to cover all these topics by the time at least. So let me introduce you what is a power amplifier. As you can see, this is a basic building block diagram of any RF transmitter, and you can easily pick up the block power amplifier is generally placed before an transmitting antenna. At a times there will be a band pass filter which is going to be there just before antenna to pass the interest band of frequencies, but mostly the power amplifier is the last block of any transmitting chain. So it is required that since this is the important block and the signal will be transmitted by antenna towards receiver, so the power amplifier must produce enough output power so that channel losses between transmitter and receiver can be easily overcome. So the power amplifier first requirement, it should produce as maximum as possible output power. At the same time, what we have discussed our previous exercise, it was low noise amplifier. So the prime requirement from low noise amplifier is that it should amplify the signal which is traveled a long distance, amplify with certain amount of a gain, but at the same time it should introduce minimum noise from its own. That is, the noise figure is most important for low noise amplifier, which is the first block of any receiver, and output power has to be given due importance, or most important parameter will be the output power for power amplifier design. So what is this high power amplifier? It is always there. It is there in your satellites. It is there in radars. It is there in electronic warfares. It is there in airborne applications or spaceborne, shipborne applications, even in your BTS towers. And if not, it is also there in your mobile phones, or in short, for any transmitter and receiver. Probably for transmitters, we do require high power amplifiers. So this is in general microwave power module. As you can see, the SSPA is the solid state power amplifier. That power amplifier made up with any solid state transistor. As we have designed our low noise and specified gain and conjugately matched amplifier, we have used one transistor named ATF34143. So using transistor, if we do high power amplification job, that transistor is called as a solid state, because the transistor is in a solid state, designed by using some semiconductor. Transistor is made by using some semiconductor. Hence it is called as a solid state power amplifier. But one of our participant, I think Santosh, was trying to design some amplifiers using vacuum tubes. So they are always there, but maybe few years down the line, or even in today's era, we have lot of solid state power amplifiers which are now trying to replace these conventional microwave tubes, because the tubes, they do have their own advantages, because they could produce very high amount of power in the range of few hundreds of watts, or in few tens of kilowatts also, but at the same time they are very bulky in a size, their weight is very high, their startup time is very large, so there are noise figure is also very high. So there are a lot of factors to be cope up with these particular vacuum tubes, microwave vacuum tubes. So As and when, if it is possible, people and researchers are always trying to propose the solid state power amplifiers to replace these conventional microwave vacuum tubes. So to operate these SSPAs and TWTAs, traveling wave tube amplifiers, there should be a proper electronic power conditioner circuit to be there, and to control all parameters of these stages, control and command logic which has inbuilt microprocessor and microcontroller circuitries will be also used there. So just my intention was to let you know these kind of power amplifiers are very important, not only for communication perspective, but also in case of your radars, and in case of your satellites, as not only communicating but also making your system very reliable and can communicate over very long distances, maybe in the range of few thousands of kilometers. So that is the most important block of any communication transmitter. All right, so without wasting much time and talking about the theory related to power amplifiers, you may always try to find out more information on this. Let me talk something about some of the important parameters for design of high power amplifier. We have already discussed about stability. So we know that there are two types, conditional and unconditional stability. If K delta test is passed, K is greater than 1, magnitude of delta is then greater than 0. So the transistor will be unconditionally stable, but it is not being passed. K delta test is not passed, so it is a conditionally stable. So that we have discussed. Output power. So what is the saturated output power, which is specifically PSAT, is given in the data sheet for a particular transistor. So you have to understand, if a 10 watt is the saturated output power, so you can design your amplifier using that transistor. Maximum output will be 10 watt. That is the meaning. What is the maximum output power can be produced by that particular transistor. So efficiency, then we have two important types of efficiencies. First is drain or collector efficiency. If it is a FET, that is called as a drain efficiency, and if it is a BJT, then that efficiency will be called as a collector efficiency. And another important parameter, which is a power added efficiency, that is more important than that of a drain or collector efficiency, will actually tell us about how effectively the given RF input is being amplified by your power amplifier, and what is the DC input power. So RF input as well as PDC, both the things will be considered while calculating PAE. I will let you know the difference between these two definitions on next slide. Then we have a linearity. By the time we were not focusing on the linearity and efficiency, the three amplifiers which we have designed, we have not talked anything about the efficiency and linearity. So these two important parameters. Anyways, output power is important, but at the same time, what is efficiency? To produce 10 watt output power, what is input DC required? So that is most important. If you are producing 10 watt output power and you have to fed with the 100 watt of PDC, so the efficiency is very less. So that power amplifier is not so good in terms of efficiency. Similarly, linearity is there. As in case of LNA, we have a trade-off between noise, figure, and gain. For power amplifier, we have a trade-off between efficiency and linearity. So we have to compromise. Either we have to go for highly efficient PAs, or we have to go for linearity based PAs. So I will talk something about this at the end of our session if some of you are interested. Then we have different gain, small signal gain. What we were trying to understand by the time we were plotting S21. So this S21 is actually a small signal gain for our power amplifier. So large signal gain, actually we have to find it out, what is the output power and what we had given the input power. So that way, exactly large signal gain is a little different than that of a small signal gain, and generally it is lower than that of your small signal gain. So then we have a bandwidth, which is very important. What is the gain bandwidth? Over the frequency, how much gain is changing, and over the frequency, how much power added efficiency is varying. So that is two different bandwidths we can always find out for any power amplifier. One is the gain bandwidth, another one is the PAE bandwidth. Then the performance over power sweep. Not only we are changing the frequency, we are also changing the input power applied to the power amplifier, and how the power amplifier performance is being changed with respect to input power sweep. That has to be also understand or analyze. Then we have a thermal management, reliability of that particular power amplifier, and at last we should also focus what is the size and cost if we try to build up that particular power amplifier. Otherwise, most of the RF transistors, high power RF transistors, are pretty costly and they are not directly available in the market. So that is the important challenge. And if you do design at very high frequency, then you should look at the realizable widths of particular transmission line sections, so that you can have the actual practical fabrication of your power amplifier. Okay, so just to let you know about drain and power added efficiency. So drain efficiency is a very straightforward. It is actually output power, which is output AC power divided by input DC power, PDC. So very straightforward. If your output power is a 10 watt and PDC is 100 watts, so this is very good example. You can say it has 10% of efficiency, drain efficiency. But what is the input you have fed to get P out? That we are not considering in drain efficiency. So this is only 100 watt is here, VDC into IDC, and 10 watt is here. That is the only consideration. But what input you are giving? Let us say if you are giving 5 watt of input to generate 10 watt. So that RF in or power input is also being considered while defining the power added efficiency. So that is more appropriate to talk in terms of power added efficiency. So it is always less than that of a drain efficiency. Now it will become 5% in this case. So that we have to understand what is the meaning of drain and power added efficiency. So both are important, but more realistic manner, power added efficiency will give you exact idea about this particular power amplifier. Now, with the brief, only 10-15 minutes I took, and I started from the basic block diagram, and I have taken you different parameters. Now directly I will be taking you to the design of this power amplifier. As you can see, let us go ahead and design a 5 watt C band high power amplifier. The GaN is what? Gallium nitride. Gallium nitride is actually a semiconductor material which is very, very suitable to design solid state power amplifiers. If some of you are interested, again, as I said, there are a lot of things which we can discuss, but to keeping the time constraint in mind, I can keep all these things there during our question answer session. If any particular participant interested to any particular topic, so we can raise the discussion on that particular topic. Otherwise, in short, the gallium nitride, we have different semiconductors, likewise gallium arsenide, silicon, we have different semiconductors, but out of which gallium nitride has some properties. Likewise, it has got highest thermal conductivity, it has got high electron band gap energy, so operating voltage can be very high. So there are a lot of advantages if you use gallium nitride semiconductor to design gallium nitride semiconductor to make transistor, and GaN transistor if you use to design high power amplifier. So our high power amplifier will be in position to produce as maximum as possible output power. So you can find in a literature almost all solid state power amplifiers nowadays are using these gallium nitride semiconductor technologies. So this is most promising semiconductor technology for high power amplifiers. Okay, so coming to the specifications, we are trying to design a 4 gigahertz C band, center frequency, let us take a 4 gigahertz, and bandwidth plus or minus 250 megahertz. So almost 400-500 megahertz of a bandwidth. Output power should be greater than 5 watts. Gain, since these power amplifiers generally operate in the compression, and if it is a gallium nitride semiconductor transistor, GaN transistor, so they do generally operate 3.5 dB compression. So the gain will be smaller, not so high. 7, 8, 9 dB is quite good. So we are saying that minimum 7 dB should be the gain, and this gain is actually the large signal gain. Output power minus input power. What is the difference? That you can say the gain. Input and output return losses should be better than minus 15 dB. Power added efficiency should be at least 55% or greater. That is always good. And this is one more important parameter called as a third order IMD, intermodulation distortion. So as we were talking about, this is nonlinear thing. What will happen if you have a main frequency? Let us say this is 4 gigahertz in our case. So there are some harmonics will be generated. So 4 gigahertz, then second harmonic will be 8 gigahertz, then 12 gigahertz, then 16 gigahertz, so on and so forth. So as we progress in harmonics, the output power with those harmonics is going to reduce. But the combination of those harmonics will also present in the very interesting band of your frequency, and those are called as third order intermodulation products. So I will let you know about this thing if you are interested. And these third order IMDs cannot be directly filtered out from this particular pass band. So two-tone analysis has to be carried out to understand this third order intermodulation concept. What is meaning of this 30 dBc? Whatever the dB signal is there for your main frequency, fundamental frequency, your third order harmonic should be at least 30 dB lower to that of your main signal strength present in the fundamental signal. So that has to be below -30, -40, -50 likewise. So that is indication maximum power will be there in the interested frequency band, and third order intermodulation is very low, so that your power is not being wasted in third order IMD. So to do this design, let us first choose the transistor. So the transistor is straight away, you can do the survey. I have selected this transistor from Cree. This is Cree is the older name, now it has become Wolfspeed. So Cree is the US based company, and this is the transistor 4006P, CGH 4006P. So this transistor I have chosen to design 5 watt C band GaN high power amplifier. So which substrate you will be using, because there will be a lot of power going around your high power amplifier. So you have to be very careful about the thermal conductivity of the substrate. So I have chosen the substrate from RT Duroid 5880, whose dielectric constant is 3.6, substrate thickness 0.508 mm, and loss tangent is 0.03, and copper thickness is 18 micron, or you can say half ounce. So this is my transistor. These are substrate parameters, or you can say substrate, and these are the given specifications. Now with this, you have to directly go to the ADS and try to see how you can go ahead and design the this 5 watt C band GaN HPA. So I will be first demonstrating you this particular transistor. So first step, as usual, is to do the DC-IV characteristic analysis. So you can see this is nonlinear model. To the left side in component palette, you can see this is CGH 4006P. This transistor, I have actually taken this zip file from Cree portal. You have to register over there, and if anybody interested to get, this is completely free. They do provide access to all the designers around world without charging anything. You just have to register with your email ID, and you can go ahead and download Cree transistors nonlinear models. So that I have done. I have registered over there, downloaded the Cree nonlinear model for this particular transistor, and I have used it. So you can see here it is CGH 40666P. If you try to search this transistor in our microwave transistor library, or maybe any other libraries available in ADS, it is not possible. It is actually not there. You have to take it from external manufacturer and import it to the ADS. So the same way you have to do, you just have to unzip this file, but the path will be where you have saved your zip file of this particular transistor nonlinear model. Okay, and these things are pretty simple, which we were doing for last 2-3 examples. We are varying now VDS and VGS in specified ranges and trying to plot the DC-IV characteristics. So I have plotted it. So one by one we'll see. This is the exactly similar kind of a curve, VDS versus IDS. The only thing which I have added over here is the load line. So once you have load line in front of you, you can easily understand what is my bias point. And if you know the bias point, you can easily comment on what is the class of this particular power amplifier, because we have several classes of the power amplifier, right from class A, class B, class AB. Later on we can go ahead and go to the switched mode amplifier classes, class E, class F, inverse class F, and there are again some of the advanced classes, likewise class S, class J, and whatnot. There will be maybe coming different maybe classes coming into the future. So basic classes are class AB, class E, class F. So class A, we all know that it has very low efficiency. So that is why class A is not preferred. Even class B is also not so good in that sense for microwave amplifications. And if you have the application of, let us say, you are not worried about you are not worried lot about the linearity performance of your power amplifier, maybe the case of space applications, then class AB is the most suitable choice. So as you can see, I have tried to make this particular amplifier design in class AB. If I place the marker exactly in the center of the load line, so you all know that that is class A. If we select the bias point below cutoff, so that is class B, and if it is in between of that, so it will be class AB. The same thing can be easily understood from this VGS versus IDS curve. So what is your pinch off voltage, that can also be understood for different VGS values. Okay, so this curve is being plotted, different VDS values you can say, and where your device is getting pinch off, so that can be also determined. So what I did, I just plotted this with these equations, load line I have plotted, and I tried to understand what is the bias point. So this is my bias point, VDS 28 volt and IDS almost 100 milliamperes. So VGS at that point will be minus 2.8 volts, and the power consumption will be, device power consumption will be 2.7. You can also go and see the device data sheet. The device data sheet is also available, and lot of things you can read from the device data sheet. So quickly I will show you. This is the device which I have been using for this design. It can be used up to 6 gigahertz. It is typical output power is 8 watt when input is given 32 dBm, and efficiency 65%. It is a 28 volt operation. So what I did, I have asked this transistor to operate at 28 volts only. So there are a lot of things which one can read from this. So a lot of information about the transistor can be got from this data sheet. So these are also the Z source and Z load are also given. If you don't have the nonlinear model, you can start your design with these impedances also, or even with the help of nonlinear model, you can check the source and load impedances of your design with bias network and the parameters which provided by the manufacturer. And this is the test board, or you can say demo circuit, that can be also purchased. So this is a transistor sitting in between. We have input side separate, we have output side separate. Here it is input matching network, this is output matching network, and these are the bias lines. So this is in general flow of any power amplifier. And about the transistor, S parameters are given, and package dimensions are also provided to make the proper footprint of your transistor. And if you are going to fabricate this transistor, this information is very important while mounting this transistor on PCB. So what is the width of this, what is the length of this from either sides, and what is the entire length and width of this packaging, that will be also required to do the fabrication. All right, so this is our step number 1. So for step number 2, as you know that we have to design a proper bias T. So how I have designed bias T, I will first let you know, because some of you were asking, I think Geeta ma'am were asking how to do the practical realization of the bias Ts. So this is the bias T which I have designed for both sides, gate side as well as drain side. So this is port 1, that is a port 2, and I have used the transmission lines in between to connect them properly. So these widths I have taken for the width which I have selected to place the component lead. I have selected this width as per the width of that transistor. So I have to create some transmission line, or we used to say that as a pads over which that component can sit on the PCB. So depending on that, I have selected this width. Now this is the lambda by 4 line, you can see, and the width can be minimum. You can keep it 0.2, 0.3, and if it is current is very high, so you can increase the width of that particular lambda by 4 section. In our earlier cases, what we have done, we have used RF choke, or you can say we have used inductor. That is very basic design. But when it comes to the sophisticated microwave amplifier design, you have to use the transmission line, because what is job of that transmission line? It will produces open to the radio frequency, operating frequency signal, and that is why your RF signal cannot enter to the DC line. If it is short here, lambda by 4 line will produces open to other end of that lambda by 4 line. So this is lambda by 4. Then to operate it over a broadband, we have used the radial stub. Again, it is a lambda by 4 radial stub whose width can be same 0.2, and you can keep on just optimizing it for better results. And then we have some transmission line sections just to extend the length, and we have to insert one resistor in between to improve the stability, because this transistor is not unconditionally stable. So to make it conditionally stable, make it unconditionally stable, I have used one resistor in the gate line whose value is 40 ohms, and another combination I have used, which is resistor and capacitor combination in series with the gate, that I will also try to demonstrate you. So this is one transistor I have resistor I have used. And how do I place this resistor on PCB? So I have created two pads either side. So the lead of resistor can sit on this and we can mount it. The 0.5 mm length is more than sufficient for this package which I have selected, and the gap of 0.5 mm is again there depending on the package of resistor which I will be using for actual fabrication. Then what else? We have to insert the bypass capacitors. Again, I have some 0.5 mm length extension created, and bypass capacitor of value 2.2 picofarad. Again, similarly, this capacitor will sit on PCB, so these two pads will be there to mount the leads of capacitor, and this is the spacing gap between these two transmission lines where actually this capacitor will sit at the time of fabrication. So some length extended and made it ground. So this is minus 2.8 volts. As you can see from our DC biasing, we have chosen VGS minus 2.8 volts. So this is minus 2.8 volts. And similar bias T I have used for drain. The only thing is that resistor is not there, because I have used that resistor for stabilization purpose. All right. So I have simulated this gate bias T and drain bias T, and the results are in front of you. So this is for 4 gigahertz S21 and S11. So it's quite good. Actually, it is not producing any loss. Your bias T should be lossless. So this is minus 33 at this particular frequency. I'm sorry. I just wanted to let you know about the loss in that particular T. So it is 0.02 at the design frequency of 4 gigahertz. And you can see over the band of 3.5 to 4.5, you keep moving your marker, the loss is very less. Ideally, it should be 0 dB. Means there should not be any signal loss when it is traveling from your DC source to gate or DC source to drain of your transistor. So that is the meaning of lossless bias T. Once you have designed bias T, now coming back to the schematic, and you can see now this is my same T. I have just replaced it with port because I just wanted to generate the symbol. Other things are almost same, nothing is being changed. And this is gate bias T. This thing we have discussed. Similarly, I have created a drain bias T. The only difference is that I have used a lambda by 4 transmission line. The length is a little tuned to get the better response at that particular design frequency. And again, this is the bypass capacitor. Only the series resistor which I have used in the gate bias T is for the purpose of stabilizing my transistor. And another network which is called as the stability network, again I have used one resistor which is a 25 ohm. Anup, I was telling you about how you can stabilize your transistor. The first and foremost thing is that you can insert the resistor in series with gate. So the same thing I have followed. I have used the resistor in series with the gate, which have greatly helped me to improve the stability of this particular transistor. Most of the GaN transistors are actually conditionally stable. So the designer's job for PA is very, very difficult. First, they have to make that transistor unconditionally stable right from DC to FT. All right. So for that purpose, I have used this resistor, and it is a good practice to have a parallel capacitance over there. Otherwise, what will happen? for your design frequency, this resistor will result into reduction in gain. So this is a kind of a bandpass filter network. If you connect your resistor and capacitor in parallel, so when your interested desired RF frequency will come, it will see very minimum attenuation during its flow towards the gate. Otherwise, however, this resistor is going to improve the stability, but it will result into reduction in gain. So that we have to counterattack with the help of this use of this capacitor. Again, these are the two pads of 0.5 mm, and width I have taken 3 mm because I have to mount two components. One is a resistor and another one is a capacitor. So it always on the choice of designer, what is the spacing, what is the width has to be taken. So it depends on what device package I will be using to realize this 25 ohms resistor and this 2.2 puff capacitor. Again, you have to look for the standard values, whether these values are available with those packages. So what kind of space would be required to mount that particular resistor, capacitor, or any other component. So that's all about DC biasing. So as you can see, biasing is a very challenging task, and once you have done the biasing, now your circuit is ready. You can generate a symbol. So which I have generated. I have created 4 ports: port 1, port 2, input output, gate and drain port. So I will let you know it in details when I go to the step 3 to find out what is the stability. So in this case, now ports I have removed and applied minus 2.8 volt to the VDC voltage, which is VGG, or get to source voltage you can say, and another voltage is a VDD, which I have actually trying to get VDS of 28 volts. So same I have applied here, and other things are quite simple. I have also used source and load stability circles palettes to plot those circles if required. I have stability factor and the thing mu, which we were talking, that is another important factor, Edwards-Sinsky criteria. So that I have also plotted to let you know about the performance of this particular transistor with biasing. And the maximum gain is also used to see the max gain. Then input port and output ports are also being added. Now I can go ahead and simulate this schematic, which is for stability, and I can plot the different results. One by one I will try to tell you. The first thing, now you see, and I hope you all will appreciate, by the time we were never focusing about the response or stability right from DC. See, because in your amplifier you are giving some DC sources. VDC means you are giving some DC to gate terminal, you are giving some DC to drain terminal, and if your transistor is unstable to those DC, it will create some havoc during the operation of your amplifier. So it is very important your amplifier or your transistor should be unconditionally stable right from DC to at least FT, transition frequency. Okay, so what I did, I plotted the stability factor right from DC, and as you can see, it is always greater than 1, right from 0 to at least 15 gigahertz, right? So that is why, and at design frequency it's quite high, 2.71. So it is stable. This transistor with bias network, which I have demonstrated, is quite good, up to 15 gigahertz. So there is no any issue. And if you see the stability measure is also greater than 0. So that is another check, the transistor is stable. And third check is what I said you, the transistor, if it is unconditionally stable, then all the stability circles, if you plot, either they will encompass your Smith chart, encircle your Smith chart, or they will be inside the Smith chart. So as you can see, most of the stability circles, because you have simulated this structure right from 0 to 20 gigahertz, so there are a lot of stability circles for load and source have been plotted, and all these circles are encircling your Smith chart. So most of the time it is evident that the transistor is unconditionally stable for most of the frequencies. Beyond 15 gigahertz, for this 5 gigahertz, 3-4 gigahertz of a span, some of the circles are intersecting the Smith chart, and that is an indication their transistor is not stable. So what is the maximum gain you will get from this transistor? So this can be plotted, and here it shows 13.8 at 4 gigahertz. If you increase the frequency of operation, you can see that the gain will reduces with this particular bias network and stability network. So this is the first DC analysis and stability. Once you have done this, then you have to go and determine the impedance. What we were doing, we were just plotting S11 and S22 on a Smith chart, but that is not sufficient. You have to get the nonlinear model of your transistor, and you have to do the load pull load pull. What is the meaning of load pull? You have to change the load impedance offered to your transistor and analyze that what is amount of output power you are getting, what is power added efficiency you are getting, what is large signal gain you are getting, and what are your expectations. So in that way you have to keep changing the load impedance and see the performance of your transistor, and fixed at certain point, yeah, that should be the load which I would like to show to my transistor output. So that will produces so and so output power, so and so large signal gain, and so power added efficiency. So one may think in other way also, sir, if it is the case of changing the load impedance, similar can be done with the help of source impedance. So yeah, that can be also done, and the exercise is called as a source pull analysis. Or even you can do the simultaneous source and load pull analysis. Even you can go for a bias sweep. So that is why since start of our training I was trying to tell you the power amplifier design, or rather amplifier design, is very challenging kind of a exercises or work which one can do, because lot of things are involved. You can change the bias voltage, you can change the temperature of operation, you can change, now as I said, you can change the impedances values which you are going to offer to your transistor to the source and load side, and lot of things can happen. So what I did, I have just created a symbol for that particular structure. I can go inside, just click on it. So this is the same structure. If I come upside, so it is placed over here, right? And this is the load pull instrument. So bias 1, so pin 1 is my gate, sorry, pin 1 is input, so this is RF in, and P2 or port 2 or pin 2 is actually the RF out. Then bias 1 is the gate, so port 3, and port 4 is the drain. So same thing I will let you know. P1 is the input RF in, keep it in mind. P2 is RF out, P4 is the drain source VDS, and P3 is the gate source. If I go inside, push into hierarchy, you can see P1 is the RF in, right? P2 will be RF out, P3 will be gate side drain voltage, and P4 will be the drain side drain side DC voltage. So this symbol I have created, and it is being now used with the load pull instrument. There are a lot of things how to get this load pull and all. I am not going into the much details of those things. Those who are interested, please try to get in touch with me. I will let you know how you can do all these simulations. Now bias voltage, V bias 1 is the gate, minus 2.8, V bias 2 is the drain, 28 volt, RF frequency 4 gigahertz. We have to specify some input voltage, let us say 27 dBm I have given, characteristic impedance 50, and now you have to specify some fundamental source impedance. So that I have taken 20.76 minus J25, or even you can start with 5 plus J10 kind of arbitrary thing. And how you can choose this input voltage, there is a thumb rule. What is your output power minus 3 dB, that you have to gain, your output power minus gain plus 3 dB has to be taken as a thumb rule to decide your input power. Okay, once you have done these quite general settings, you can go ahead and plot load pull. So lot of data will be plotted in front of you from this load pull. All right. So out of these only, I will just let you know the 2-3 important things. So this Smith chart is actually about the power and PAE contours. So what is output power at this particular frequency, that is being plotted for different values of impedances, you can say, and this is the PAE contour. All right. So if you see this, so I have placed a marker for PAE and output power. So from here at the load that gives maximum output power. So the Z load, you can see the load impedance 23.026 plus J 4.4, and the input impedance is 20.766 plus J25. So this is the thing. And if you come back into the schematic and see, so this is the source impedance 20.76 minus J25. So ZS is conjugate of Z in. All right. So this Z in is a plus. During your first load pull, these impedances will not be equal. You have to pick up the impedance from here and place its conjugate in this particular setup. So you have to rerun your load pull. It is not like that once you will do the load pull and you will get the exact output. So this is very tedious job. You have to keep changing this impedance values depending on the results which you are getting and what are your expectations. So load pull can be done more than 5 times, 10 times, or even 15 or more than that also, depending on your requirement of gain and power added efficiency. That you can see gain is now 11.5 dB actually, and PA is a 56%, and the output power delivered will be 38.5 dBm. So if you move these markers, you can see that so the impedance values are changing here. Can you see? The red colored one values are being changing. Similarly, if you change for PAE, these impedances, the impedance is changing and PAE is also varying. Likewise, you can understand the effect of these things. So this is the minimum which I have explained with respect to this. There are a lot of things which we can understand. This is actually for maximum power. The load values for maximum power. Similarly, we have set of Z load, Zs or Zin, you can say, for maximum PAE. So if you wanted to design your power amplifier for maximum output power, this is the best impedances which you can take away from the load pull. And if you wanted to design for maximum power added efficiency, you can take away this. Now you see the power added efficiency is maximum 61.57. For maximum output power case, the power added efficiency was just 56%. Output power was 38, so it is larger than this output power, which is now 37% in case of PAE. So if you go for higher power added efficiency, your power delivered is little lower. So there is the trade-off between selection of the requirement, whether you wanted to design for power added efficiency or you wanted to design for maximum output power. Okay, so a lot of things has to be actually there and which we need to understand. But once you have done the load pull analysis, now you can go ahead and follow the step which we used to call it as an ideal match. So what is there in ideal match? So the same circuit is there. Now the impedances which I have got from load pull, I have inserted here. So if I have got Z in, so I have taken conjugate of it and I have created one variable named as ZS, and I have entered the values of ZS, likewise RS plus JXS, and I have set them tune variables. So what do I do? Similarly, I have created a variable in output also, that is ZL, and its values RL plus JXL, and I have taken these values from the load pull analysis. You can see these values are little different from the load pull because I have tuned it. And why I have tuned it? The impedances which you have got from load pull, they are actually there, but they do vary with respect to your frequency. So what you have to do, you have to vary this particular impedances and find out the best set of impedances which will result into the best output performance of your power amplifier. So you keep plotting the output power delivered, maybe in watts and dBm, you plot power added efficiency and small signal response S11, S22 and S21. With the help of some set of equations, they are always there in load pull, or you can write them at your own. So they are pretty simple to write. Once you have done it once, then later on you can just copy them and use in another workspaces. So you have to just see what is the best suitable impedances which you will be showing to your transistor to the input and output side. And once you have decided those impedances, then you can go ahead and design your matching networks. Then Geeta ma'am, it is for you. Actually, you were asking me how we can design the practical matching network. So for this 5 minutes, you will benefit and understand how these matching networks can be designed. So first thing, I have designed a matching network which is pretty simple matching network. The impedance which I have I will let you know one more time from ideal match. What is the impedance? It is 20.711 minus yeah, it is 20.711 minus 28. So this is ZS. While doing impedance matching, we have to match with Z in. So minus will become plus, and this is the matching network with the help of multiple transmission lines having variable lengths and widths, and to encounter the effect of change in abrupt change in the widths, I have used some of the taper lines. So that is my matching network design. Indeed, it is input matching network design for 4 gigahertz with this particular substrate. So once I have done that, now I can go ahead and create layout for this matching network. So it will look like this. I have used different transmission lines with different tapers. So this is input matching network, and this is layout of that input matching network. I will create its symbol and see its response, EM layout response. So now you see this is the input matching network. I have connected in between 20.711 plus J28, and this is the input port 50 ohms. So I have simulated this and I have got the response quite good at 4 gigahertz, right? So this is how you can design a practical matching networks. Similarly, I have designed a output matching network. As you can see, this is the schematic for output matching network. This is schematic for output matching network. And now from your load pool and ideal match, you know that your ZL, which is actually the impedance looking towards load, is 12.24 plus 9.5. So you have to match conjugate of that. So when you come to the OMN, so that plus will become minus and it will be matched with the 50 ohm. So this is load now 50 ohm. Again, the same concept is being used, multiple transmission lines with variable length and width, and there are a lot of literature papers available how do we can design the broadband matching networks. So that is also there. You can take the help, or there are lot of trends to design the broadband matching networks also. Based on the filter design, if you take the bandpass filter and you design the bandpass filter using these microstrip transmission lines over the specified range of frequencies, so that will become your very good kind of a broadband matching network. The same concept I have used here. If you are interested, I can demonstrate after the completion of this discussion. So this is my OMN, and the response of this OMN I can resimulate it and show to you. Yeah, this is also good. Minus 19 is the return loss, and insertion loss is quite good, minus 0.056. So that should be ideally 0. So I tried to make the input and output matching network, but we have to make the input side separate and output side separate. So what I did, I have created the schematic. See, this is matching network. Here my transistor will come to this port, gate of my transistor will come to this port. Then to the top I have gate bias T, and practically I have used 3 bypass capacitors of different values. So I have created a provision to use 3 bypass capacitors. As I said, general practice is not to use a single bypass. We have to use 3 bypass. One is for RF, one is for low frequency, and one more is for high frequency. So all these things, all these ripples at different frequencies can be taken by these 3 bypass capacitors. This is my input matching network, right? And the stability network is also there. So everything I have created in a schematic and generated its a layout, you see. So this is my input section now. Practically how it looks, you can see here the gate will come, gate terminal of the transistor. Here the stability network with resistor and capacitor will come. This is gate bias T, lambda by 4 line, very thin lambda by 4 line. This is sufficient for that particular current. Radial stub, some extension in transmission line. Then I have a resistor of 40 ohms. So provision for that resistor I have created to insert the 40 ohm resistor here for the improvement in stability. Then I have 3 coupling capacitors in parallel, 1, 2 and 3. And here the actual DC will be connected through a jumper wire, which is minus 0.285 volts. Then I have an input matching network, the gap for coupling capacitor, and here RF in will be connected. The SMA connector will sit here, which will take the RF in into amplifier circuit. So this is input section. Similarly, I have created output section. So this is IMN layout. Similarly, I have created output section. Once I have created the output matching network, so this is output matching network. which I have just demonstrated you. Then this is the drain bias T. We don't have resistor over here. Again, 3 bypass capacitors, provision to use all these 3 bypass capacitors I have created. And then I have generated its layout. So it looks like this. Again, lambda by 4 line in drain bias T, radial stub, then some extension in the length of a transmission line, 50 ohm probably. And these are the 3 bypass capacitors as we have used in case of gate bias T. And this is output matching network. Though it doesn't looks pretty good, but it does very good job. If I demonstrate you the results of this particular power amplifier, you will appreciate the significance of these matching networks. Then this is output coupling capacitor slot and RF out. So SMA connector, output SMA connector to take out the RF power from your amplifier will sit here. Okay, so once you have a separate input matching and output matching, now you can have a complete amplifier, integrate all them together. Now you see, this is the complete amplifier. This is gate bias T. One more time, here it is a drain bias T. This is gate bias, drain bias. This is input side. You keep scrolling. Again, stabilization network, then IMN, and then coupling capacitor. For that also I have created a slots, and then input port. Similarly, output side, output matching network, coupling capacitor and load. So once you have completed your schematic power amplifier, complete schematic, you can generate its layout, and before that you can just see the response in schematic. So this is the response in schematic I have got. I got 6 watt of output power at 27 dBm of input power. In dBm if I talk, so 27 dBm is input, so output is 37.798 dBm. So the large signal gain is straightforward 10.798. That is what the large signal gain. But if you see S21, so S21 is not 10.798 at 4 gigahertz. It is at 4 gigahertz, it is 13.165. Marker 3 is at 4 gigahertz. You can see. So this is the difference between small signal gain and large signal gain. So large signal gain is quite accurate for power amplifiers, which directly talks about what is the input you fed and what is output you are getting. Rather, small signal gain is only giving you the S21 kind of a relation. So it is not considering what is the actual power you have been fed to the input of that transistor. Then power added efficiency I am getting it is a 61.8%. So it is not actually these are the schematic results, but before going for fabrication we have to make its layout. So I have created a layout of this amplifier, and the complete EM should look like this. So this is input side, this is output side with bias T and matching network, coupling capacitor. And you can see now I can just zoom it and demonstrate you. See, I have placed resistor and capacitor in the slot which I have created for. Similarly, I have placed a resistor in this particular gate bias T. Can you see this? This is for stability. And then these are the bypass capacitors 1, 2 and 3. So this is called as a EM circuit co-simulation. Then biasing and all, everything is there. This is input coupling capacitor exactly placed over the place, and we have output coupling capacitor. So this is all about the EM of our high power amplifier, and you can see the results of this complete EM amplifier. Now these are, you can rely on these results. So at 28 dBm I'm getting 7 watt of output power, or in other words I can say this amplifier is producing output power. If you see the marker 6, it is 38.5 dBm output power at 28.1 dBm input. So almost 10.5 dB of a gain it is offering. And this blue curve is actually talking about the gain compression. If you see, M8 marker is indicating almost 3 dB of a compression. So this amplifier is actually operating at 3 dB compression. This gain is at the 3 dB compression. That is meaning of this curve. Okay, and the efficiency at this I have just made it quite good for this particular design, because it is little lower frequency. My other design is at 12 gigahertz almost. So the efficiency is also quite good, 65% power added efficiency. Drain efficiency will be more than that, but again This is at this particular input power and center frequency of 4 gigahertz. What is its variation over the frequency? That we have to see. And these are the small signal results for this particular power amplifier. Now see its amplifier response over the frequency. So what I did, the same circuit is there and I have created the variable frequency and I sweep this frequency from 3 to 5 gigahertz in step of 0.01, and what results I have got now you can see. So this is the first result, 3. I just modified it to have the better visualization, 3.75 to 4.25. So 250 megahertz plus or minus, that we have said during the start of our discussion on power amplifier. So this is almost 500 megahertz of a band. So at the center I got 7 watt of output power, and gain at the center almost 10.5 as we have seen from our previous result. On right y-axis I plotted gain, which is in a blue color, and on left y-axis I plotted output power delivery in watts. So over the frequency it is changing like this. Even in dBm output power and gain in dB you can plot, and their response over the frequency can also be seen. So that is called as a gain bandwidth of this particular power amplifier, or how output power is changing with respect to frequency. All right, then this is the drain and power added efficiency. As you can see, the drain is on a right y-axis and PAE is on left y-axis. So drain efficiency is 72, more than that of a power added efficiency. Always it will be more, and PAE is a 65% as we have seen during our last simulation. So these are the small signal results. So this is frequency response of my PA, and as I said, you have to carry out the two-tone analysis. So to do the two-tone analysis, I have created for this schematic itself, and I defined a variable which is the center frequency. Fc is the center frequency, Fc plus F offset and Fc minus F offset. So there will be two tone, one is the center frequency and another is delta frequency. So the delta offset I created is 1 megahertz offset. So you have the set of two-tone modulation kind of a analysis. All right, and if I simulate it, so I can plot the harmonic balance and I can see M1 is the almost 4 gigahertz, and you can see other marker I placed on this particular tone, which is the third order intermodulation, you can say, which is at 4.003 gigahertz, right? So it is 22.42 dB, and at M1 it is 34.9 dB. So difference of that will be actually your DBC, almost 12 dB or so, 12.5 dB or so. So that is what the DBC you can say about the this particular amplifier if you do the two-tone analysis. So that is all. And before I conclude, I just would like to demonstrate you the job card which you have to make to complete the layout of your or fabrication of your power amplifier. So this is the casing footprint, you can say, where your transistor will sit. This is input side. So this is the place which you have to actually cut it from these two sides. So you have output section separate, you have input section separate, and your transistor will be in between on the aluminum plate, which will be helpful for providing a heat sink kind of action. And this is my input side. So just I have modified the layout being its visibility point of view. I can always write the things. I can also insert the rulers or even the dimensions I can write over there to get an idea about what is the overall length and width of my circuit. So you can see almost 40 mm is the length, and if I have created for height, it is not there. Almost it is 50 or 55 mm only. So that is what one PA. Actually, I have just demonstrated, and it took almost 1 hour to demonstrate one power amplifier. So this is what I have demonstrated you, and these are the results which I have shown to you. And this is the fabrication which we have done with the help of one industry, and how your final layout of a power amplifier will look like. So this is the thing. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask, because I have completed one power amplifier example. If you are interested, I can go to another two examples. I have created 5 watt for KU band, and also I have designed 200 watt power amplifier for KU band. So a lot of things which I can discuss with you, but it is not the entirely power amplifier training program. So that's something I just wanted to let you know about power amplifier. So I have taken this 1 hour. If you have any questions, any comments on this, so we'll take it. Otherwise, we'll break for 5 minutes and we can go for maybe next power amplifiers, or we can directly go to our microstrip patch antenna session.
So I have a question.
Please.
So in this you have used a radial stub.
Yeah.
So what is the means what advantages it offers if we compare
See,
it with rectangular stubs and all?
so this is actually a lambda by 4 line, right?
Yes.
Both the sides we have a lambda by 4 line. This lambda by 4 is exactly lambda by 4 at lambda only, right?
Yes.
So this will be actually this point will be short to RF. RF is flowing in this direction. So you expect that RF should not enter to DC line. So this is DC line. This is also DC and this is also DC. And this is RF line. And this is again RF line also, right? Input and output side. So when RF is traveling from input side and going to the transistor input, or maybe from transistor output terminal to the load side, you expect that RF should not go to this side, means it should not go to the DC. So what will happen if RF is trying to go here? So this point is actually short for RF, right? So if you have the distance of lambda by 4, that short will get converted into an open. So this point will be actually open. For what? Let us say you are doing this at 4 gigahertz. So 4 gigahertz, if the bottom of this lambda by 4 line is short, the top end of that lambda by 4 will be open. So this RF of 4 gigahertz cannot go in this particular DC if it is there anyways, right? But this lambda by 4 will do this job only at lambda, and you know that you are interested over the band of frequencies. So to make it little broadband response of this transmission line of lambda by 4, we generally use a radial stub. So it will make the response of this lambda by 4 line quite good over the band of frequencies. That is the job of radial stub, increasing the bandwidth.
Okay. Okay, so I have one more question.
Please.
So for particular application like RF energy harvesting, if I'm using a rectifier, if I'm connecting a rectifier to antenna, do I need to use this separating element, like do I need to separate RF part and DC part?
RF part and DC part. Actually, in case of energy harvesting, whatever signal you are taking from your antenna, that will be actually you would like to feed to your rectifier, right?
Yes.
So anyways, you have to insert the impedance matching network. As I said earlier to you, there you did not to bother about this separation.
Okay.
But in this case, we have to bias our transistor in a such a way that it should not interfere. So we have to have proper care.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Any other question?
Yes, sir. Sir, about that resistance and capacitance sizes, that will be decided by the fabricator. So first we'll have
that will be that will be decided by designer only. What is the value of that? Let us say resistor is I am using of 40 ohms or maybe 25 ohms, or capacitor of 3.2 picofarad. So these are the values I wanted to use in my power amplifier. So I need to look at the packages which are available. Maybe 0402, 0404. You might have heard about these device or dimension packages. So depending on that, that resistor and capacitor availability I have to check in the market. If it is not available in the market for so and so value, So I cannot go with that.
So when we're going for this fabrication, will we be fitting it in, or will they be doing it for us?
No, there are different things. Actually, you have to simulate your entire amplifier and send the Gerber file, which I have just shown to you. This file you have to send in Gerber format. Once you have sent it, they will provide you this kind of a PCB. Now, once this PCB is ready, you have to take help of technicians to mount the transistor and all the lumped components, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that job is at your end. Maybe you can take help from industry person. Then you have to fit the connectors to the input and output side, give proper DC voltages to the top, means DC lines, and make your circuit ready. Generally mount it on a aluminum kind of a bar, which can take care of the heat sink requirements, and you can go ahead and test it in the laboratory.
Yes, sir. So why I asked this was because before we started design itself, we should determine, for example, microstrip minimum width, or in case of resistors and capacitors, there's widths and all. We have to determine that before we start a design.
Right. Not only about the RLC and the means their width and length, but also you should see that if you are designing power amplifier, whether that transistor is available in market or not. Nowadays, lot of transistors, power transistors are available, but you have to see what is the cost of that transistor. They are pretty costly, maybe 2,000, 5,000, even one transistor can cost up to 25 or 30,000. And even though if you are ready to pay that high amount, some of the transistors, because I have not talked about my 200 watt power amplifier, some of the transistors, they are not you cannot intend them to India, because it requires some licensing. Otherwise, it is not easily sellable.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Yeah, that also see, you have to also look for the substrate availability, whether it is available or not. If you are getting some samples or ready to purchase 4,000-5,000 rupees substrate, what will be the custom you will have to pay for that? Because I have purchased components for these two circuits. They have costed, including RLCs and including the transistor, 8,000, 9,000 something was the actual cost, and it took almost 8,000 custom on my that purchase. So it went on up to 15 to 16,000, though I wanted to keep it very affordable. Only for 5 watt I intended the things.
So can you mention some reference material to work with this scratch to design this high power amplifier?
Yeah, that is very good question. Actually, you can actually start with the book of Guillermo Gonzalez. You just keep on designing the different matching networks, understand the S parameter relations, design lambda by 4 sections, read about the basics of all these things. And once you have done that, if you feel that now I understood all these things, you simply design simple maximum gain and specified gain amplifiers, which we have actually done through our training program. I hope that will really help when you will take your actual LNA or maybe high power amplifier. If you do understand all these things properly, then it is very easy to go ahead and pick up any journal paper and try to implement that paper using maybe ADS or AWR, which is another design environment. And one reference immediately comes into my mind. You can refer to the ADS cookbook. So they have given very good example for all these different passive components and active components. So power amplifier is also there.
So where did you approach for this fabrication and testing kind of work?
Actually, I was there at Space Application Center, ISRO. I will let you know about all these things off the recording, right? If you are really interested, I will share my experience related to all these things. But what I can say, I was there with Space Application Center of ISRO. Almost 6 months, my college has sponsored me through a sabbatical training. So I got a lot of exposure to all these technologies and all these concepts. So the people at SAC were very, very cooperative, and it really helped me to come up with such kind of output. Otherwise, it won't be possible. As you were thinking, it was also the similar kind of a case for me. If I am alone and entered in this very challenging field, so it will be pretty difficult for me it would have been very difficult for me to come up with such a kind of results. So quickly, I will just demonstrate you. This is my another KU band GaN HPA. This was C band. This is KU band, and these are the results of this KU band. And this is another PCB which I have fabricated, and I have taken, as you asked me, I have taken help from one industry person to fabricate this. The company is there in Pune. With lot of efforts, they could realize these small bits which you can see. Actually, these are the tuning pads. I have changed it 3-4 times, and at the end they have come up with this very smaller dimension of tuning pads. All right, then this is the schematic of my 100-watt structure. Then I have used it with the two power dividers and combiners, and I have made this 200-watt power amplifier. All right, so you can see here 194 output, 194 watt is the output with the gain of 7.245. But all these results, make a note, all these results are software results. I have not actually means done complete flow of this fabrication. The work is still in a progress. So who knows whether I get the results or whether I don't get results for this power amplifier when it is being completely fabricated. So it's very difficult to comment anything on that.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. I hope there is no further question, and if, as I said, if you are interested, we can really discuss about all these things. But now I will just conclude this session, and we take at least 10 minutes of a break, and we'll afresh start with the microstrip patch antennas. Is that fine?
Yes, sir.
So take a 10 minutes quick break. We'll come back and we'll go for microstrip patch antennas. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.